Thul looked up into the murky sky. How many nights has it rained this cycle? He asked to himself as he entered the abandoned carriage, noticing the fresh blood splatters and the claw gouges in the metal. Thul noticed a body in the far corner of the room. He crossed over to the body and knelt. Thul touched the body with his forefinger and whispered, "Zersphila." Thul was suddenly dragged from this time, his mind fighting to maintain his self-ID as he viewed the man's last sights. The man was part of a trade caravan from Zethos, carrying random manufacturing equipment to the port Vip. The caravan was impressive 50 elves, half drivers and handlers for the brontosaurus haulers. The rest guards that rode the bronto carriages were on guard bowls. The caravan had left Zethos when the rivers were frozen solid and traveled until they met their ending in a warm deluge. So strong it was as if the gods were crying for what was about to happen to these poor souls. As the man rode as the looker in the middle pole, he was basically useless and unable to do his job during the downpour. The caravan was moving through a shallow valley that had steep walls. It was the quickest way through the area, but very tight-packed, especially for brontosauruses. The Rexes came once the sun set. A pack larger than I've ever seen before tore the caravan apart, ripping and tearing the brontos and the bulls. The rage and the anger they displayed was thunderous and stole the courage from the elves. The bass of the growls burst the eardrums from the chest-thundering vibrations. This man died from his heart seizing from the sound waves from their roars. Thul screamed as his mind returned to his body, clutching at his chest, feeling the pain the man felt. Damn, how many Rexes was that? More than I can count, and that poor soul died within minutes of their ambush. He groaned. I can't do that spell again. I'm not feeling another death like that. Thul kicked the man's fallen helmet and turned to leave the broken bronto carriage. He looked up at the sky and shook his head. The gods are still crying over this massacre. They didn't even eat half the bodies, and Thul couldn't help but think of some of the equipment looked like it was damaged in a deliberate manner. Like it was planned, but that is a stupid thought due to them being Rexes. Thul walked over to the engines that had been split in half. As he knelt closer and thought deeper, he failed to notice the world go silent and air pressure increase. A claw, longer than a knife, entered Thul's spine as he studied the engine. The Rex quickly spun and flung Thul's body across the valley, slamming it into the wall. Thul didn't have any time to register what happened before the possibilities took him. A kind gesture for a damn man. Thul, by the grace of who knows which god, felt his mind start to awaken. He felt something warm go into his nose, bringing his alertness to the forefront. Thul opened his eyes to a large, dark, hairy mound staring at him. Thul relaxed slightly. It was just a large dog bugging somebody that was asleep. Thul felt a tearing pain in his chest and a constant ringing in his ears, driving him near mad as each second passed. Thul thought to himself, calm yourself, go through the process. I can feel a massive trunk supporting my back. I can see this black dog. It's almost like a void, it's so dark. Drooling in front of me, I can smell a fire. No, a cook fire. Its aroma is heavy in the air. I can hear laughter and music nearby as well. Thul could feel some ease pass through his system as he finally realized that the dog wasn't the only one standing in front of him. A beastly-looking man with hundreds of red inked lines across his scarred body stared at Thul. Before Thul could say anything, the beast man laughed, with the joy of one that has been reunited with a good friend. The man laughingly said, "Good evening, Dark One. I'm glad to see you've made it. The others," he nodded to the campfire that was some distance away from them, "didn't think you would." "The Rex fucking threw you against the cliff," he laughed, even harder. "Where are my manners? I'm a bellow, and we found you after dealing with the Rex. Nasty business, that one. It's been scavenging attack sites recently." A bellow grinned at Thul, and the poor souls that stumbled upon the attack sites, either on purpose or fate. Thul couldn't believe that had happened. He tried to think back to what had happened before he woke up at this time and place, and couldn't remember. Rexes being around while he was investigating the attack site? Thul said, "I'm Thul. I can't remember what happened before I woke up here." Abello laughed even louder. Abello laughed even louder than before, drawing some more of these beastly humans over to the conversation. He said, "Why, it's a pleasure to meet you, Thul. While the wreck stalked you after tossing you like a sack of potatoes, we came up from behind, and well, I won't spoil our trade secrets." Before Thul could speak, Abello continued, "And afterwards we found you with a hole through your back the size of a handle, and luckily we had some Thul with us, otherwise you would have passed to wherever you dark ones go after you breathe your last breath." Abello laughed with what looked like was the joy of the gods within his eyes, and said, "Rest, Thul. The Thul still needs time to mend you. Aliba will stay with you while we tell stories and process our hunt." Thul felt his mind leave his eyes as Abello left, realizing that Abello was using some sort of magic to wake him from the Thul's sleep to explain what had happened. Some days later, Thul finally awoke from the Thul's sleep, using his own faculties this time. He opened his eyes and realized he was some distance from his previous resting position. The sun was just coming up from behind the mountains, bathing the dark green woods in a golden fire that demanded the attention of Thul's eyes. As Thul failed to retake his vision from the wilderness, the large dog from before slammed into Thul's body, knocking him into the wet ground. Thul cursed as the beast greeted him with the slobbering licks that retold Thul back to the present situation. Thul pushed Aliba off as he heard a familiar booming laugh from somewhere behind his head. "Looks like Aliba was right. You are alive once again, Dark One," Abello chuckled. Thul groaned as he pulled himself off the ground and stood for the first time in what felt like months. Thul started to systematically flex and relax each muscle in his body, starting from his toes and ending with his brow. "Where did the rest of your group go, manling?" Thul asked. "They left a few days ago. On to the next hunt." His smile stretched from ear to ear. "I would have gone with them, but..." He pointed his pinky finger at Aliba. "He wouldn't leave you until you woke, so I stayed." Thul glanced at the dog and reached out to pet the beast, but before he could, Aliba lunged and knocked him onto his back to cover him slobber once again. Thul could hear the booming laughter again. "He sure does like you, Dark One. Aliba and I are leaving to catch up with our group." Thul watched as the dog ran over to Abello, and noticed that the beastly man had a new red line running across his chest. As they began to leave, Thul called out, "Wait, where am I? Are you just going to leave me here?" Abello laughed once again and said, "You are a few miles north of the initial attack site. Should you only take you a few hours to get back there." As Abello turned to leave, he paused and smiled to himself and said, "You could always come on our next hunt, Dark One. But be warned, these hunts warm even your cold souls." He laughed and began to walk north, along some sort of game trail that ran through this forest valley. Thul could feel something in his soul tug him north instead of south to his job. Even as he tried to move southward to the attack site, Thul's legs began to stride further north, following the beastman and his dog as they made their way through the mountain path in search of the others. Thul could feel a bit of the laughter enter his throat as he walked, for no reason other than the joy of the possibilities. Thul laughed to himself in his mind as he walked along the path. "I never would have thought I'd be hunting a wrecks with humans." They caught up with the rest of the group after passing over one of the smaller peaks in this mountainside. As they descended into the valley, Thul could sense that they were getting close to the group as the dog started to sniff at the forest floor rapidly and wag its tail excitedly. As they followed the path, they came into a small clearing where the rest of Abello's group had set up a makeshift camp. Thul finally felt the hunger pains as they approached the camp, and that heavy aroma he experienced all those nights ago entered his nostrils. Thul groaned and asked, "What are they cooking? I smelled it the other night, and it smells like the chop houses back home." Abello laughed and said, "It's the Rex meat from the one that tried to eat you the other night. You know, I've heard that if you eat the meat of the Rex that almost killed you, you get their strength for a lifetime." Thul was about to question the last part of his statement until he realized that Abello was laughing even harder as he walked into the camp and greeted some of the other members of the group. Thul could only feel his stomach calling for the meal, so he followed the dog to the cook fire and pulled off a hunk for himself. As Thul started to gnaw at the meat and think about what had happened, the dog started to whine and paw at his feet. Thul sighed in exasperation. "Fine, dog, take some," and tossed a hunk of meat to the dog. As he ate, the rest of the group, including Abello, gathered around the cook fire, pulling off meat and filling the air with laughter. jokes and song that swirled Thul's head, causing him to lose his senses as the sun retreated from the sky and the full moon took its watch over the world. Thul doesn't remember passing out at the cook fire. He doesn't remember much of what happened at all. But he looked up and saw that the moon was still high in the sky as he pulled himself to his feet. As he looked around, the rest of the group was sleeping, where they had fallen from the food and smoke. As Thul walked to the edge of the camp, he noticed the beastmen had no watchers anywhere in the camp, or at the perimeter of the camp as he headed to the forest line to remove the pressure from his bladder. As he approached the tree line and moved further back for privacy, he felt a hand drag him down into the underbrush and cover his mouth. Thul looked into the eyes of another member of the hunting group, another wild man. Not as many red lines, but Thul recognized something was wrong due to the strange mixture of excitement and terror in the man's eyes. The man pointed with his pinky deeper into the forest, silently as he's afraid to wake a vengeful god. That's when Thul saw a shadow move 100 yards deeper into the forest. A huge shadow that was inching closer and closer to the camp. Thul felt dread come over his senses as the man pointed back to the camp and said, "Go wake the others. This one is hunting us. We don't want to throw off its rhythm. It makes them harder to deal with." Thul crawled as quickly as he could back to the camp to wake the rest of the group, feeling as if a giant clawed foot was going to crush him into the soft earth below, to rest within the mountain for the rest of time. But as he neared the dead cook fire, he found that the rest of the group was already alert to the threat that was approaching. Smiling ear to ear as they gathered their spears and pikes, Thul realized that the man in the forest was just getting him out of the way, and cursed as he picked himself up. A bellow laughed as he saw Thul, not as loudly as before, Thul noted. There you are, Dark One. Pick yourself up and stay with me during this hunt. He handed Thul a large spear and said, "Walk as I do during this, dab as I do, and you'll have a line that Thul would find worthy." He laughed and started with the rest of the group toward the forest, laughter in their souls as the largest Rex Thul's ever seen crashed into the clearing, roaring a challenge to the group that made Thul's very soul try to flee from his flesh, but the group only laughed louder and louder in response to the challenge from the tyrant. Thul could see a flow of blood coming down from the Rex's right flank. He realized that the man from the woods had already started the hunt and started to bleed the monster. As the sun rose to find its station above the world, the glade was bathed in a golden sunlight that showed the carnage that occurred during the hunt. Thul sat and watched as some of the group processed the Rex and told stories and laughed to pass the time. He winced as the red line was added to his skin, starting at his heart. As Obello explained in his laughing manner, the line starts at your heart, where all hunts start, and the line travels as you did during the hunt, winding across your body, telling of your movements during the hunt, and thus your survival of the hunt. The Rex's blood is a distinct hue that Thuxello will recognize, and he will welcome you into his hall with laughter to feast and tell stories and jokes until the void swallows everything. The line traced from his heart and crossed 3 times around his chest, a ring for each time they circled the Rex. Thul remembered the group circling the Rex with each step towards one of the group. The rest pierced its hide with their pikes and spears before jumping back into the circling motion. 3 times they crossed the initial start of the dance before the tyrant fell. Hundreds of wounds crisscrossed the Rex's body as it laid across the ground. As the day continued, Thul finally felt he had the energy to move once again, and he tried to stand up and move about the clearing, but the black mess of a dog tried to knock him over again, but Thul sidestepped the dog and was able to keep his feet. Laughter came from behind Thul. "You finally managed to keep your feet around him," Obello said. Obello slapped Thul on the shoulder and said, "You're first to Rex and you live to get a red line. What's next for Thul?" Thul didn't know what he wanted to do logically, but his soul felt compelled to hunt another Rex, and he laughed. "My soul demands another hunt, Obello." Finn. Thank you for listening. A link to the stories will be provided at the end of the video and down in the description. I also predict UFC events. I'm a statistician as well. That will be linked down below as well, my Substack where I post those. More stories will be coming out as I develop the Sundered Realms universe. Thank you for your time. You have a nice night, or day, or whatever.